A very warm welcome to you all to the one-on-one set. We have with us tonight Megan Sin. She is 24 years old and a writer. She has published her first novel last year, Terminal, which is a science fiction. Megan, thank you so much for joining us in the studio of the MBC.
Thank you very much for the warm welcome, Koyal. I'm very honored to be here today.
Megan, creative writing is divided into fiction, poetry, and scriptwriting, with a focus on writing in an original style. What does creative writing represent to you?
Creative writing to me is kind of a form of self-expression, and it's a form of art actually, where you get to imagine things and people and worlds, and you get away from the reality for a while. So creative writing to me, that's what it is. It's getting away from the real life and going into an imaginative world.
It's all about, in a way, to transport yourself in a different world, right?
Yeah, where you can build everything and anything from the ground up. Like, it doesn't have to be aligned with what is actually here, right? It can be anything you want. So, yeah, I think that's what creative writing is to me.
And how did you develop this interest in writing?
I've developed my interest, I think when I was in grade school. I started writing short stories. I always liked doing role playing, and I would do that with a lot of my cousins and imagine stories as I went on. So that hobby picked up into writing, and then that grew along with me.
It was your hobby then.
Yeah, it was my hobby, yeah.
And what is the importance of writing in your life now?
I think it allows me to express what I can't say verbally. I'm a very reserved person, and I don't really usually say what's on my mind most of the time. So writing to me has helped me get over things, move on from things, say something even if it's on paper, because I can't say it to
other people.
to other people's face. Yeah, so it's helped me grow and develop and
It's talking to another self then.
yeah. It's talking to the mirror of myself.
Yes,
Yeah.
your mirror. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Megan, you have written your first novel last year, Terminal. The story is based in a post-apocalyptic world, and it is a subgenre of science fiction where the world as we know it no longer exists. Tell us more about this book.
So this book is obviously in a dystopian reality, and it takes place in a fictive world where the land is nothing anymore, and there are very different cities and military bases where soldiers have started training. Because it's in a post-apocalyptic world, that means there's a lot at stake. So the story follows a group of soldiers that train in a region, and they follow their adventures towards what's going to happen next in that setting. Yeah.
So what motivated you to write a science fiction novel? What drew you towards that genre?
I think it started with I was inspired with different authors who wrote science fiction. For example, I was greatly inspired by James Dashner, who wrote Maze Runner. I don't know if you know him, but he made a movie and everything out of it. So I think that was the trigger point as to why I wanted to write a story that was like that. And I think science fiction, why I like this genre is because it's not that far removed from reality, because it's science fiction. It still has some realism to it.
Yes.
It's not completely fantasy where there's magical creatures.
It's not fantasy at all.
Yeah. So science fiction is kind of a genre where it could happen or it might not, but the possibility of it happening is still there. So, yeah.
Science fiction, in a way, allows you to explore a different zone, we can say, a different reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then, what are the different genres that you write as well? It's not only science fiction, right?
Yeah, I wrote science fiction like a while back when I was writing Terminal. And now I've moved, so as my writing grew along with me, I started writing more about reality and relationships between people, more about young adults and how they go through life and develop their identities as they go. I'm very attached to my culture, and with all the things that are happening right now in the world, I've gotten more interested into writing about the Chinese culture and where we come from and our Chinese roots and everything. Yeah.
Megan, how much time did it take you to write Terminal, to complete the book? Must have been a long process.
Yeah. I think I took 3 years to
3
write
years.
the story. And then, so that took a long time because it was between school and work. And
Yes.
yeah, it's a lot of, especially since it's a thick plot. So I always had to go back and reanalyze what's happening, what the readers don't know, what I do know. So it took a long time. And then for the editing part, that took a long time as well. I think I took 6 months.
6 months.
Yeah, to go through it over and again and cut out parts that I don't want and everything. So, yeah, three months and 6 months. Yeah.
So you completed the book during lockdown last year?
Yes. Because of lockdown last year, that's how I got time to.
This was a blessing disguised for you.
Yeah, I was at home. I just graduated, didn't have anything else, so I opened my story back up and I was like, yeah, I might as well just edit it. It's there. Yeah.
When you first started writing that book, did you actually think that you would publish it one day?
No, actually, I just wrote it out of fun. Yeah, it wasn't in my plan at all. Yeah, I just thought at the stage where I was done with my book, it was already done. So then I just thought, well, might as well publish it since it's done, because I didn't do all this work for nothing when I think back on it, because 3 years is a lot of time.
And how was your parents' reaction when you decided to actually publish it? Did you actually give it to them to read before?
I gave to my mom before actually publishing it, just so that she could review. So I gave out the script to a few of my close friends and relatives, just so they could read it over, like the pre-promotion. But she was pretty surprised by the amount I wrote, and I think she was pretty surprised by the quality, maybe, because I think in university I developed a lot more of my style, and I took courses in creative writing. So I think she was very surprised by how much I could write. Yeah.
So you had a formal training on creative writing as well, because you're an art student, right?
Yes. I majored in fine arts in university, but so I wrote as a hobby all throughout high school. And then I took a class of creative writing in university, and that's where it all started, because I realized there were people like me who wrote a lot, and we actually read out our pieces in class. So that gave me motivation to write. I think that really pushed me to continue my writing. Yeah.
It was an enriching experience, we can say, because you got the chance to meet other writers as well and to learn about different techniques, right?
Yeah. It's very encouraging and motivating, actually, to see other writers around me writing their own stories, and
different circle.
yeah, and you get to know how they think and how they see the world as well. So that was very,
and be inspired as well by them.
Yeah, it was really, really good. And my professor, she really encouraged me. She always wanted me to read out my piece because we took turns.
Yes.
But I never wanted to, because
Shied.
yeah, it's quite, because writing is vulnerable, right? You write and it's a part of you that goes on paper. So reading that aloud to a room of people it takes quite a lot of courage.
Of course.
Yeah. But I learned a lot from that experience. That's where I really grew in terms of technique and ways of thinking. Yeah.
Megan, post-apocalyptic stories like your novel Terminal are often packed with action, adventure, and survival stories. What are the features, according to you, that make a post-apocalyptic novel interesting?
I think the setting, first off, is very important because there's so many elements that go in the post-apocalyptic world, right? You need to know how you survive, what's happening around you, how is the environment. So I think that's what makes it interesting because there are so many avenues you can go through to make that science fiction become your reality. So I think the setting and the environment is a really important factor to make it interesting. And the second factor would be maybe your characters.
Yes.
Because in my opinion, I think the characters drive the story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They are involved with the conflict.
Yes, exactly. And they go through, right? They go through everything that happens.
Yes.
So
They are the ones that have to adapt to the changes.
Yeah, yeah. And they are the ones that deal with everything that happens and all the mess and the chaos.
Yes.
So good characters that have flaws and imperfections and are like us is what really makes a post-apocalyptic novel interesting because the stakes are high. You either do something or you die maybe. So yeah.
Your main character is a soldier.
Yes.
How did you build that character and why in the setting of a war? Because something that we are not really familiar to here.
Yeah. I think the war factor came in because of you know how growing up we were very exposed to all the wars that are happening.
I agree. Yeah.
Even in history class, we had wars, the China War, the
Yeah.
Second World War, the Pearl Harbor thing. So I think being exposed to that, I watched all of it, but I thought to myself, well, these people have families and they have children and wives, and nobody really thinks, well, obviously the ones who are involved think of them, but as we go on to our day-to-day lives, we don't really think of the people who are putting their lives at stake. For example, COVID is an example of a war, right? War between
Right. You're
humanity.
fighting against.
Yeah, exactly. So now we are aware of the people putting their lives at stake, which is very nice because we actually respect those people. But what about the soldiers that go to war and it's a battlefield and they come back with post-traumatic symptoms?
Of course.
So I think that's what drew me at first to the war kind of setting. My character is, I would say, a part of myself, an aspect of myself I put in there.
Really?
Yeah.
In that soldier?
Yeah. He's a young man. So obviously,
Yeah.
no.
The gender is different. Okay,
Yeah.
we get it.
But he is very.
The male version of you.
Sorry?
The male version of you.
The male version of me. I wouldn't say completely because he's very good at what he does, and I'm not physically I'm not strong at all, but he is
Okay.
very good.
Yes.
But he's very young and impulsive in that sense. He has a lot of problems with dealing with his anger and the feelings that he has, so he gets a little impulsive at times, and I think it shows a lot of inner conflict that
Yeah.
might come out of people, and I think it can also relate to other people that feel the same.
Something that
Yeah.
many youngsters can relate maybe
Yeah,
in a conflict.
especially teenagers as they grow up,
Teenagers.
right? Yeah, they get that weird sense of battle going on between themselves. Yeah.
And what was your creative process for writing Terminal?
Yeah, so I think, like I said before, I started with the idea first. So the war and the post-apocalyptic setting. I wanted that setting.
So you had actually an idea in mind. You planned it to write something on war.
Yeah, I planned something. Yeah, I planned something with a lot of action and battles and plot twists. But the plot itself, I didn't develop it directly.
Okay.
Yeah, I had the storyline kind of, so like the environment and the characters I built from the environment. And then as I started writing, there were a few things that I discovered myself. I
Along the
didn't
way?
yeah, I didn't know it was gonna happen until it happened.
Okay.
So yeah,
In
I
a
would
way, the story led you.
yeah, basically, it was like writing. Oh, that could be fun. Let's add that. Yeah, it's also fun because you get to play with the plot twists and the
Of course.
turns and the suspense.
And to reassess maybe the
Yeah.
initial story that you had planned.
Yeah, definitely. Because as I wrote, I had planned a chapter. I would plan my chapters beforehand so that I had at least a summary of what happened. With all the things that are going on in the story, it's hard to keep up, so I had notes and everything. But then that chapter, maybe one day as I wrote, it could be completely obliterated just
Yeah.
because something else fit in.
It's always good to go with the flow.
Yes, yeah. So I would say half.
Yes.
Half planning, half
Exactly. Balance should
yeah.
be struck.
balances everything.
Yes. Megan, what are the major themes in your novel and why have you chosen to talk about those specific themes? I can see the dichotomy between self and other in the story. What are the other themes that you have
Yes.
written?
I would say the biggest theme of all is love and friendship, which is the basic of human needs, really. I think especially during the time of war and post-apocalyptic and everything is at stake and there's high risk. I think love and friendship can get you through things like that.
Yes.
Because if you're surrounded by people that you trust and you care for, then anything is possible. That was the message I wanted to translate, because when you read my book, the characters, they go through a lot of stuff, but that what stays real is the bond that they have, especially as soldiers, because they grew to know that their lives are precious and they have to look out for one another. Yeah. I think there's another theme, like an additional one. I would say it's not as strong as love and friendship, but faith is another one of my themes. Because it's a world war and there's a lot of...
So believed to overcome every hardship.
Yeah, and that sliver of light that you have, the hope that you have to get through it, yeah, I think it carries on throughout the whole novel. So it helps the characters as they go through the plot. Yeah.
You also have an interesting title, Terminal. Where does the idea come from?
So honestly, it came from the idea of trains because I like taking the train.
Okay.
That's like my favorite mode of transportation is the train. I just have something about the train. I like going in the train and seeing everything pass
Yes.
by. How it developed into my title is the concept of the train is when you step into a station, then that's it. The train is going and it's not coming back. So I like that parallel between the actual train, the terminal, and how you see that conceptually. So in comparison with my book, it's kind of like you go through that, but once you step into that stage, then you can't go back. So it's kind of a metaphor kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just don't say it at the end, but in a way that a transition phase.
Yes, yeah, the transition of going from one place to another.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because in your novel, for example, one thing has ended, but they go in the future. They're in the
Yes.
post-apocalyptic world.
Yes,
So
yeah.
it's a transition way.
Yeah. And I also think it relates to the term terminal as it's something bad is going to happen. So when you say, for example, terminal disease, that means it's quite something that is there are a lot of things that can happen and it's a high risk. So I think taking that into consideration with my plot, then that made sense then, the connection between the story and the title.
And what were those rejected titles, maybe?
The rejected title, there was Entity, which is actually the place, a place in the story. It's called Entity.
Yeah.
I think it means something like to be as one, an entity.
Yeah.
But then I felt it didn't reflect enough of the story, and So I just
Terminal
decided.
is perfect choice.
Thank you.
The cover of your book is also very captivating. It actually gives a sense of uncertainty and it depicts the unknown.
Yeah.
Tell us more about the cover. You're the one who designed it, right?
Yes, yeah. The cover, I wanted to be very mysterious and suspenseful, as per what my story is about. But I also felt like I wanted the reader to be part of the story. I think that's majorly the reason why the hooded figure is you can't see who it is, and so it allows kind of an open-endedness that the reader can imagine themselves being that person on the cover. So I think that's what I had in mind as I designed it. And there's also like some smoke and it's red
It's
at the
red.
back. So that it quite alerts to the danger of what's happening. So already when you see it, it screams, danger zone, don't go there. So that was the feeling I was going with. Yeah, that's what I had in mind.
And you're the one who designed it. How much time did it take you to design that cover?
I think maybe a day. Yeah, a day to design and place the elements and everything. I didn't want too much on it. So I felt like the visual of the mask, the hooded figure, and the background was enough to say what had to be said. Yeah.
Megan, what do you think makes science fiction or post-apocalyptic stories popular among youngsters?
I think it's the adventure that you go through. Many young people like to get lost in other worlds as they grow up
That's the
because
thing.
reality is hard, especially when you're at that age, prime age, where you don't really know who you are. I think a lot of youngsters can relate to the post-apocalyptic in a manner where they can be anyone they want. So I think the adventure and the action is what draws them in.
To explore the unknown.
Yeah, yeah. And it's always something about somewhere you don't know that's interesting to you. A lot of the fantasy novels I read, they have worlds and maps of their own. And I think the imagination that comes with it draws young people in too, because they can create their own stories out of that when they see your story.
And share with us the response you've got concerning your first novel.
Uh, People told me it's very heavy as a plot. There's a lot of things going on, and people have been very pleasantly surprised by the quality of writing. And
Yes, you're very detailed.
yeah,
So-
yeah, I tend to do that. Yeah, I think what they liked the most was maybe the characters, the cast. There's a lot of them, but I think every single one of my readers had one favorite. So that was nice to hear because all of my characters have different personalities and I love them all dearly, like separately. So yeah, yeah.
But then, what are the challenges that you've encountered during the publishing this book or writing this book? What were those challenges?
I think I do think the main challenge that I faced, and I think most young writers or artists or creatives have that, is lack of confidence.
Yes.
Because you do it, but you're not sure how people would see you or how they would respond
Always
to that.
thinking about the judgments of
Yeah,
others.
yeah. So that can be a major setback, and that did hold me back for a long time. And the criticism, you're scared of the criticism, right? Because
Always.
it's your work.
Yeah.
So that was the major challenge. The publishing part was very challenging as well, because had to edit. Well, I self-published, so if you self-publish, there's a lot more going on. You have to design the cover, edit, design how your book is going to be printed and everything. So that was a big challenge as well. Yeah.
We are actually drawing towards the end of this episode. But Megan, now, what are you working on now? Any new writing project?
So right now I'm trying to mix in my two loves, art and writing. So I'm trying to make a project that would overlap art and creative writing together. So we'll see how it goes.
And any advice you would like to give to youngsters to encourage them to live their passion like you are doing?
Yeah, I would encourage everyone who's interested in something to just do it. Just do it because especially in the era of the internet, there's nothing holding you back. And you can be anonymous if you want. You can be public if you want. At the end of the day, it's your work. So if you're proud of what you're doing, then that's good. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Megan. It was such a pleasure to have you tonight on the set of One on One and talk about your first novel, Terminal.
Thank you to you, Koyal, and the MBC team. It was a pleasure.
Dear viewers, we have now come to the end of this episode. Thank you for your time. We hope to catch you next week at the same time, same channel. Have a great evening.